How's it going, Chris? It's great to get you on the podcast. I looked back because, you know, I I just kind of fly by, the seat of my pants with my calendar at this point, and I looked back and I was like, man, when did we start talking about this thing? It was like in September, and we're finally on in November. I'm already like wrapping up my year trying to figure out like, all right, who do I really want to talk to, November and December, because I typically don't record anything in November and December.
Yeah, I am the same way. I try to, I can't tell you how many guests have tried to reschedule once November, December. Oh, this family thing came up, so I'm the same way. I try
Yeah.
to get my year wrapped up by the end of October, and anything in November and December is just a bonus.
Yeah, yeah. No, I try to, because I have such a crazy schedule. I try to just like take off a month or two from like some of my, side work that I'm doing, right? Like unfortunately, I can't take like 2 months off from my 9 to 5, but at least like from the podcast, all that content will be already recorded, and my course creation, book writing, all that stuff will be like on pause, for a month or two, which will be nice, like for a change, because it's like I kind of do this to myself, I guess, because like once my kids are home from school, from daycare, like I'm with them until they're up, until they're down. I'm
Yeah,
not
which is
working
awesome.
or anything like that. If someone calls me from work, like I even told my boss, I was like, let me be very clear. If you call me after work hours, it better be something that I'm the only person in this company can solve it. Like if someone else can solve it, I'm hanging up on you, just to be clear.
Yeah, and these days, I think particularly since COVID, this kind of work-life balance is totally blended with work from home. When does work really end? When does, family start? It's a little blurry these days.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like you have to have that clear delineation, for yourself.
Yeah.
But now, it's crazy because I started my career going into the office, just not even thinking about it. I mean, I'm based out of Chicago, so I live downtown Chicago, and going into the office wasn't that big of a deal typically. It's a bus or a train ride away. But now I'm out in the suburbs. I have a house, right? I'm 45 minutes away from the loop with no traffic, which never happens, right? And then for someone to like have me go into the office, that is such a hard sell. And I never expected it to be that hard of a sell, but now it's like, well, why would I go work for you for 50K more a year when like I get to be home, I get to do my
Mhm.
podcast, I get to be home when my kids are home, like I get to take them to daycare. Like why would I ever go in? And that's something that like I feel like companies fail to understand, where it's like the benefits like are in my corner in this situation, and I don't know. Seeing work from home go away like it is, it's frustrating because it's like, can't you guys understand this? Like I'm doing the same amount of work, if not more for you.
And that's like most of the people that I've talked to who went from fully in the office to fully at home are like, I get so much more done when I'm at home. Now there's some people that are like, I can't focus. I can't wait to go back into the office. And for those people, go for it, go back into the office. But other people are like, there's not 16 people walking by my office every day interrupting me. I can, when I want to get 2 hours of uninterrupted work done, I can do it at home.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I mean, yeah. That is such a good point. Like, because in the office, like I'm talking to other people, and devs are coming up complaining to me about stuff that I'm forcing them to do, and now I have to argue in person rather than over camera. Like it's a totally different situation. I'm not like trying to be argumentative, I guess, with them,
Yeah.
but that's it's the nature of security work at this point.
Yeah.
Well, Chris, why don't you tell me how you got started in IT and just cybersecurity overall, right? Because you created maybe the most popular application or website that basically any analyst and every analyst, will use every day of the week, which like a lot of people don't even realize it. I feel like I had no clue who the creator was or anything. I was just, I had that website open constantly. I mean, it was every day when I got started.
And it's kind of funny for the first probably 15 years, I actually, not that I avoided having my name associated with it, but there was nothing on the website pointing towards me as an individual
Yeah.
for probably at least the first 15 years because I was just like, well, I just, yeah, I, not risk well, yeah, I'm risk averse, but I just didn't want to be the public face of something. It was just let this thing be its own thing and let me not be involved with it in that sense. So I think it was 19 oh gosh, I'm going to date myself, 1999. I was working for an online not online mail order catalog company. We're just starting to the early days of the internet, and our marketing department would work on the catalog, and then they would FedEx a hard drive with the catalog on it to the printer. And the printer was finally like, hey, we're going to start doing this online. We want you to upload your catalog, and we need you to access our FTP site. We're going to poke a hole in it. We need to know your IP address. And everyone went, huh? What's that? And in those days, like inside your network, you wouldn't even know what your public IP address was. And I thought, well, gosh, there really should be a website to tell you that. And that night I went home, and gosh, in those days, it was like $200 to register a domain name, registered WhatIsMyIPAddress.com, started it up on a Windows NT server box in my home on a DSL connection. And that was the beginning of it.
Wow. Yeah, that is it's fascinating because it's like it's such a core, tool almost, right? And I mean, at least when I was using it, like there was no like pro, version of it or
Nope.
anything like that. It was just very simple. What's my IP? Hit enter.
It was seriously for the first probably 5 to 10 years. If you went to the website, there was no logo, there was no content. It just spit back your IP address for probably the first 10 years.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's super helpful, right? It's interesting what the security community, puts together, right? That like ends up being so super helpful for everyone else, and like I feel like the security community above and beyond everyone else, like it's typically free. Like I've had people on that have created, tools and enterprises and whatnot, and they're like, oh yeah, here's this free version that secretly has everything. You just need to know how to look, or where to look.
IT just seems to be a lot more altruistic than a lot of other industries.
Yeah. Yeah. Because, I feel like everyone has tried to get relevant information before and it was extremely difficult to find. And like that sort of thing really frustrates, hackers and security people overall, right? And when you frustrate a hacker, you don't like detour them. You attract them, you know. Same thing with taunting, hackers. It's like, why would you ever taunt a hacker who's already bored and he
Yes.
is looking for a reason to do anything?
I will never publicly or privately say, I'm impenetrable. No one can ever get to, gosh, no, I'm
Yeah.
not going to invite that. Sure, everybody's hackable. You jump on a mountaintop and say you're not, you're now a target. And I have no desire to be a target.
Yeah, like what was it? Caesar's Entertainment a couple years ago, leading into DEF CON. It's like, yeah, I've talked about it several times on the podcast, right? I'm sure my audience is probably like tired of me talking about it to some extent, but it's like, dude, what are you really thinking right now? Like, seriously, you have 40,000 of the world's best hackers in one place. I mean, the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA, they all show up to these conferences like to learn and recruit from this conference, right? Because they're not getting these people to apply. They're like, meeting them up at a bar and slipping a card under their drink saying like, hey, give me a call. You know what I mean? Like it's that sort of environment. So like what's going to happen when we have a vendor who goes and buys us unlimited drinks at the bar and then we read a news article saying that Caesar's Entertainment just said that they're unhackable. Oh, I happen to be in Caesar's Palace right now. Let's see how unhackable they really are.
Anything that is designed by humans has vulnerabilities.
I don't think they found that guy yet.
I don't know that they have.
And just to make a point, too, they blue screened their slot machines for the next 4 years after that and got DEF CON kicked out of Caesar's Palace, which is very frustrating. It's like, man, I don't understand it. And this guy's supposed to be in security too, and he says something like that. It's like, all right, well, you've never been on the other side of security then. You've
No,
only
it's
been a suit,
don't invite drama.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I work for a professional services firm now, and I work with like some of the best in the industry. I mean, some of these people used to work for, the NSA, right? And you start talking to them, and I've actually interviewed a cyber warfare officer from the NSA before he got disappeared off the internet after our conversation. And the episode hasn't gone live. It'll go live next August. I'm just going to let it go live, so if the US military is hearing, like, that's when it's going to go live because, like, we did the recording and then someone found out that he did the recording and they told him to tell me very firmly not to release it for the next 4 years. And I was like, well, that sounds like a good reason not to do it for the next 4 years because it's not a very good look for my neighborhood for me to like have the FBI show up, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, not good look at all. They'll kick me right out. But he was talking about how they're trained and they're trained just like the special forces. I mean, literally, you look at the special forces, Navy SEALs, Green Berets, Delta, any of them. And I mean, it's a 2.5 year process. The government's putting millions of dollars into these people to ensure that they're trained to the absolute best capabilities possible. And any day, for any reason, you can be cut. They
Yeah.
don't like how you look that day, you're cut. Like, they don't like you were 10 seconds off on your 5 mile run. All right, we're going to punish you with another 5 mile run. And if you fail that one, you're done. Like, that's just like cut and dry, plain and simple. 5 mile run in wet sand in California,
I'm in
like
trouble.
in boots, good luck. But they do the same thing on the digital side, which was really interesting to me, where, they would wake you up in the middle of the night. He said sometimes they would wake you up in the middle of the night and, force you to come in and immediately do an exploit, like build one right now. It has to get into this target. You have 2 hours. That's what it is.
It
And
makes sense.
yeah, he said that like he knew a lot of people that just never even made it through, that they got cut immediately. Like, he said that there was one person that he was friends with that he was really tired and he improperly put a line of code. It was just one line of code, but he like misspelled something. So the code wasn't going to work, when it hit that line. And they saw it and they let him go that day. They're like, yeah, you're going back to whatever fleet you're from. Good luck. He was out.
I mean, it makes sense if, the cyber surface is just another platform and you need to have the same discipline and organization and functionality as what's the expression? Those that are kinetic?
Yeah. Yeah. Well, it's also important to have that skill set, be like the tip of the spear, especially because it's another war platform. It's another, like, it's not just an attack surface. It's like, if you want to avoid another country, which we did with Iraq, you turn off the lights.
Yeah.
You get every advantage that you can. You turn off the water, I mean, like, that's what we did. That stuff was unheard of. When they announced that, oh, we turned off the power in the country, everyone thought, oh, we bombed their power grid, right? Took it out. No, it was still intact. We wanted it intact for when we like won, and owned the country and, oh, here's the lights back.
Yeah,
Like, we digitally got in there and turned them off and they never came back on. It's just a interesting world we're in right now.
absolutely.
Yeah, we're kind of at the precipice of something that I don't think anyone really knows what's gonna happen next. It's a really weird time. It's like it could go any way, any direction. It doesn't look good.
And I wonder, like, how many generations before us have said exactly the same thing?
Yeah, probably a lot, because the world is like really crazy. But I feel like now it's even more present because we have such great access to the data, to the information. It's an interesting time, and cyber warfare is going to play a bigger part in whatever comes next.
Yeah. Well, you just watch what's happening in between Ukraine and Russia
Right.
and the tit for tat back there, and how is new technology being used in modern warfare? I mean, the whole way drones have been used in Ukraine, and it's amazing that, like, hey, forget these multi-million dollar drones, let's use $100 drones.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm getting my PhD right now, and kind of like the precipice of my PhD is the 2022 Viasat hack that Russia pulled off.
Hmm.
That took down comms and GPS and everything for the region. And it's like, if we don't start figuring this out, we're going to lose wars before they even start on the ground. That's the very first thing anyone with half a brain in, the war theater, the theater of war would say, yeah, we need to own their communications. Like, how can we possibly like effectively take them out quickly or ever if we don't own their communications? We have to own their communications, their capability of GPS, all this stuff. And how do you do that? You do it with satellites. You don't do it on the ground. The ground is becoming less and less relevant for satellite capabilities.
Have you seen the footage of what a lot of the Ukrainian fields look like now? They look like they're covered with spider webs
Yeah,
because of all the electronic jamming on the drones. A lot of them are flown via a fiber optic line, and so they're just a single thin filament running behind the drone. And so the
that's
fields are covered with
crazy.
single lines because, like, well, everything's being jammed, so let's go back to the physical realm again.
That's crazy. It's such a weird thing to think about. And I was watching something where it said that like they're basically back to like trench warfare,
Hmm.
like World War I style of fighting. Like, it's insane.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, I really want to dive into like your podcast overall. And full disclosure, I haven't watched it. I haven't listened to it. I've known about it. I just haven't. Like the thing with podcasting, you would think, oh, now all you listen to is podcasts. It's like, no, that's like the last thing that I actually listen to. So like, please don't hate me for that. But
Not at all.
yeah, being in podcasting myself, you get to have on some really interesting guests.
Yes.
And sometimes it's at least for me, sometimes it feels like the guest probably shouldn't be there in terms of like I feel like I'm talking to someone who's on the run right now. Do you ever
I
encounter
interviewed
that?
John. I interviewed John McAfee while he was still alive, and so yes, I mean, he was on the run at the time.
Jeez. Yeah, I had talked to Chris Roberts I think he was like out of Australia or something, of all places. And he was talking about how the Taliban paid him to develop a technology to counteract the US jamming of their IEDs. And so he did. And I was like, man, I immediately feel like I should just end this conversation. Like it was probably like 100 episodes ago, but still, it's like I don't know if I want to talk to you anymore.
Yeah, I could totally see that.
Yeah, I want to have him back on, but I feel like it needs to be well, like figured out and decided on what we're gonna discuss.
Yeah,
You know?
there's nothing worse than a podcast conversation going sideways on you.
Yeah, yeah. Well, there's nothing worse than someone coming on the podcast and not wanting to talk. I've had that before, and like you said before we got started, right? Like 99% of your episodes always go live. For me, it's the same thing. The vast majority of them go live, but then there's a couple that like you get the person on there and you can always tell if they're nervous or if they don't want to be there or if they really want to be there or if they're experienced with being on podcasts and whatnot. And the only one that I don't like having on is the ones that don't want to be there, right? Because it's like, all right, now you're wasting my time and your time. So like that's an insane amount of money right there, that you're wasting. Like why are you even doing it? Do you encounter that often? Do you still let those episodes go live? Because like it's a weird situation because you're still being authentic to yourself and your listeners and your viewers, right? But you're not showing that person in a very good light, so it's a weird thing and it's not a good conversation typically.
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple. I interviewed an author, and he's a great writer, but he was an atrocious interview. It was ask him open-ended questions, and it was yes. Can you tell me more about that? No. And so I've had a couple interviews like that there was no value to the audience, so why ever publish it? It was unfortunate loss of our time, but hey, that happens. And then I've had a couple of interviews where the guest was overly promotional about something. It was, hey, if you visit my website, we've got this course and da 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 da. And then the next sentence was, well, hey, if you go to the course and da 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 da. And those in general, we've been able to edit them. And so maybe it was a 45-minute recording. It turns into a 35-minute episode because we got rid of all the self-promotional stuff. So I think I've kind of gone both of those ways. And I think we've gotten good or better at, I should say, necessarily good at. We've gotten better at kind of pre-screening guests, making sure that they've got interview experience, that they're used to being in front of a camera. They're not, in a dark room where you can't see them, and their microphone is from Radio Shack from 2019, from 2000, gosh, from 1990.
Yeah.
But I feel like these days most people they're in front of a decent camera, they've got a decent mic, they know what they're talking about, they're passionate about it. And once you get someone who's passionate about a topic, usually the conversations are pretty easy to have.
Yeah, no, that's very true. I probably need to do a better job of, like doing prep calls and stuff beforehand. Yeah, I mean, I definitely need to. There's always like a list of things that I come up with throughout the year that I say like, okay, next year when I take that month or two off from recording, like that's what I'm doing, because there's just like no way to do it outside of that. You're busy with the kids, busy with my PhD, busy doing the 9 to 5 stuff. It's like the podcast is such a side thing right now, and it's becoming more prevalent, more important, which is interesting because when I started this thing, I mean, my goal was literally having 10 people listen to the podcast, and that was a success.
It sounds very, very similar to my start.
Yeah.
When I started, it was like I had been interviewed for a bunch of podcasts, and someone I was working with says, "Well, you need to do a podcast now." I was like, "Oh, great. Like, I don't want to do this. Okay, I'm going to commit to doing it. I'm not going to think about the costs of it. I'm not going to think about income. There's going to be no monetization, like, none of that. And I'm going to commit to doing 52 episodes. And if I make 52 episodes, then I'll decide what I'm going to do." And here I am, 300 episodes in at this point, and there's so many neat people to talk to. And yeah, sometimes it gets a little repetitious, but I've just talked to so many incredible people. They're so passionate about helping the community, that are interested in, if I could just keep one person from being scammed, that it's worth it. That excitement just works through, all those days when you're like, I don't know if I really want to do this. Knowing that someone is going to be positively impacted by the content is like, okay, that's worth it. That's going to make it worth it doing.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I have that same mentality. I like to know what I'm doing is providing value to some extent, because if I'm not, then like, why am I doing it? I used to, I mean, I've worked for a lot of different companies, and the good managers that I've had, they understood, like where I was coming from when I'd be on these calls and I wouldn't say anything. And, my architect or other engineers or whatever, they'd just be like, well, Joe's not saying anything. What's he doing? He's supposed to be the lead. And my manager would just say, yeah, he doesn't want to just fill the air with, useless information or repeating something that the architect already said. Like, that's not value to Joe. And it makes sense because he's not wasting anyone's time. In fact, we're kind of wasting his time. And like people started to, kind of understand that, right? Because like that's true. Like I'm not gonna just talk just to talk. I mean, I know I'm a podcaster, but it's like, there has to be value behind it. And that's also why I started the podcast too, right? I started it because I had such a hard time getting into security, and all I wanted was advice, from people already in the field. And I'd be reaching out to people, and they wouldn't even respond. They wouldn't even look at my message or anything. And
That's awful.
I just felt like that is so dumb, right? Because wouldn't you want, if you really like the field, wouldn't you want as many people in it as possible? It doesn't like make you less valuable, and it was so frustrating for me. And now I'll respond to pretty much everyone, online, right? Like, so now I'm probably going to go and get flooded, because I'm reminding my audience that I'll actually respond to them. But like, I respond to everyone, online that asks me a question of like, hey, how do I get into this thing? Like, how do I do this? Where do I go for this? The last thing that I even do is like promote any of the content that I've like put out that I get paid for, which the companies that I do it for, they get pissed off at me because they're like, you did 300 episodes and you didn't even mention, the course that you did. And I'm just like, I don't think about it. I don't know.
Yeah, I mean that's the challenge. Is there's you get people that get just too busy with life and get too tired, and don't want to engage. And then you've got people like you who are like, no, I had a rough go at it. I want other people to have a better experience. And I I try to do that with, the support that I offer on whether it's the podcast or the website. If someone is like, "Hey, I got scammed," I'm like, that hurts me. It's like, okay, what can I do to help you? Like, is there anything I could do? And honestly, in most cases, it's the most I can do is be a listening ear. Like, I can't help you get your money back. It's unlikely that the person's going to get caught, but I can at least be someone who's going to listen to what happened and empathize and say, man, try these things, talk to these people, take these steps to at least stop anything else bad from happening. But, last thing people want is like, I want help and there's nothing from the void comes back.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah, like even today I got a phone call, and I think yesterday too I got a phone call trying to scam me, saying that I owed the IRS some money. Like, trust me, if I owed the IRS money, I would be in contact with the IRS. Like, they would be calling me, not some scammer trying to be like, "Oh, we can lower your bill." Like, there's no
Yeah.
lowering it with the IRS unless you go and find some legitimate receipts. Like, there's no lowering it.
It was funny. I was interviewing, I think it was Ian Mitchell runs an anti fraud organization called The Noble. And he had been in Las Vegas doing conferences and whatnot. And at some point along the line, he started getting these phone calls from a medical debt collection company saying, "Hey, you haven't paid for your ambulance ride." And he's like, he just assumed it was a scam and kept getting the calls and kept getting the calls. And finally he was like, okay, this is getting annoying. What's going on here? And someone had needed a ambulance ride in Las Vegas and had provided his name, his address, his social security number. All of his personal information was used in that
Wow.
incident. And so now he's like, okay, how do I prove that it wasn't me? Because like it's
Yeah.
well documented I was in Las Vegas at the time, but it's weird because sometimes there's a fraud that happened and the call you're getting is legitimate, but how do you know? Like, I would have been the same thing, Matt. I wasn't there. It wasn't me. I didn't take an ambulance ride.
Do they even have cameras in ambulances? Because that might be a HIPAA violation, you know?
I don't know,
How
but
else would
like,
you even prove it outside of a
let
camera?
well, you probably like the guesses from the ambulance rides, no. But if it was a result of, let's say, an auto accident, then there's going to be police body cam, and you'd probably have to FOIA the police department for the incident and all that stuff. And they might have had a real driver license and they might have had real information for the person that was taken to the hospital, who then just used this other guy's information on the form. But like someone had to think about it in advance, like had planned on using fake information.
Yeah. That's insane.
I wouldn't think of that for an ambulance, right? I could, you go to the dentist, I need a filling. Like, okay, I can plan in advance to use someone else's identity for that. But for an ambulance ride, maybe it was just after the fact when he started getting billed. He's like, I don't want to pay for it. I'll have someone else pay for it.
Yeah, I wouldn't even like memorize someone else's info like that. You know what I mean? Like, that's like taking it to another level where like this guy
Yes.
must be doing it all the time to where, he gets into some situation and he gives a fake name and knows the address and everything. Like, that's like some, CIA rogue identity sort of stuff where you have to memorize an entire persona.
Yeah. I mean, Ian was thinking that it was maybe because he's fairly well known in the anti fraud community, that it was someone effectively intentionally trying to mess with him and doing it for that reason, not necessarily because they were trying to skip out on paying for an ambulance ride.
Yeah, one of us got bored, That's what it is, right? Like I've had some of these hackers on, and like they're a national security threat if they ever get bored.
Yes.
Like the government needs a task force just to make sure those people are not bored. you know?
I'd love to get a whole bunch of bored hackers and say, like, take down some of these, trafficking rings that are running scam call centers in East
Yeah.
Asia. Like, yeah, Kit Boga and those guys have done it, but like, let's get some NSA level guys going and like take out some of these scam organizations. Let's see how fast
Yeah.
you can do it.
Yeah, that would be amazing to see that, and it's interesting that the hacker community doesn't have a bigger presence in terms of that because, I immediately think about like child exploitation, right? Where it's like there's no way that these criminal organizations that are doing that are so well secured that no
No,
one can get in. It's
no.
just no way. There's no way, right? especially like how they're hosting it, all that stuff, right? And it's weird to me that the community hasn't formed, a group that all that they do is take that down in their free time, like let's actively attack this thing. It's probably, I mean, I don't know. I can't think of more things that are like more evil
Yeah.
than child exploitation. I mean,
Yeah.
especially if
Just
you have kids and then you realize, it's like, hey, they are extremely vulnerable,
yeah.
like extremely malleable, It's like if we're gonna protect anything, it's gonna be the kids.
I would, hey, anonymous, hey, whatever group who wants to
Yeah.
go after child sex trafficking, like, go after the child exploiters, please.
Yeah. Maybe I'm gonna go start something for it. Like, because it's like, I don't know. That's just like the easiest sell in my mind. Like, hey, we can all go get drunk together, even. I'll pay for the alcohol. Like,
No one is going around defending, the child exploit.
right. And if you are, it's a little sus. It's a little,
Yes.
a little questionable
That
there.
becomes worrisome in and of itself.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. So you also wrote a book, and I'm starting down this path as well, which I don't know, I'm probably going to regret doing it, to be honest, because like I'm getting my PhD right now, and it's just like full on, but in my light defense, I think I got past the hard part of my PhD, and now I just have to actually do the technical work for a weekend and
Mhm.
write about it. But I don't know. I feel like I'm going to spend more time on it than I than I estimate.
Probably. Privacy is just this. Okay, so if you look at the macro level, there's this argument of privacy versus security. Of if you're looking at it from like a governmental or a national security point of view, that if you want really good national security, people have to give up their privacy. And if you want to have really good privacy, then there's going to be international security risks. And all those are probably worthwhile conversations to have. But I think that's different than like your personal privacy and your personal security. Those things are not opposed to one another. If you are being more secure, you're probably also being more private. If you're being more private, you're also being more secure. Like these things are not. It's not like in your personal life you choose one or the other.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's the book about, and what's it titled, and what made you want to go down that path of writing the book?
So the book is Privacy: How to Maintain Your Privacy Without Becoming a Hermit. Because like I think there's so many books out there that are like, hey, how to become invisible. Well, that's a miserable existence. Ask John McAfee. Well, I guess you can't anymore, but like they're either written from this perspective of it's an all or nothing. You either have to like disappear and, live in a cave somewhere, or, in conjunction with that, you need to be absolutely afraid and terrified of anything and everything. And that's like that turns people away from just making practical decisions in their life. I think it started with a podcast talking about fraud and scam and realizing like there's steps that we can take that are actionable, practical, that move us down the road. In the same way, from a security standpoint, if you don't have 2FA, I don't care what it is, if you don't have 2FA, enable something, anything, because it's better than nothing. And I think it's the same thing too for our privacy, is taking little steps that we can manage that like, hey, I can do this, keep us from being low hanging fruit, keep us from reduce our data from being monetized, reduce what's honest about us on the internet. There's just simple steps that we can take.
Yeah. Yeah, that's very true. It's interesting that you approach it that way, because I'm sure that that will be really helpful for like the elderly community, I'm sure that they feel like they're completely, like out of the conversation, out of the realm of possibility of even staying protected. They're just kind of hoping, that it doesn't happen. Interesting example is, my wife, she went to Kohl's, and they wanted to give her a Kohl's card, and she asked
Mhm.
very specifically, is it a credit card? And they were like, no, it's not a credit card. So my wife put down the information, and the credit pull got blocked, and I got an alert on it, and I didn't care if she was gonna open up the credit card or whatever, but I immediately texted her. I was like, hey, did you intend to do this? Like, you want me to just unlock it real quick? And she was like, what? They told me it wasn't a credit card. I was like, oh, they committed fraud.
Yes, no, that would never happen.
Yeah. At like a huge chain, it was at Kohl's, right? Like, and she like asked very clearly, is it a credit card? And they were like, no, it's not. And she's like, okay, if you're gonna give me a discount, like, I might as well, you know? And, sure enough, it shows up. I'm like, "Man," 'cause that's such a basic thing, to do, to just lock your credit
Yep.
that so
That would
many
be no.
people don't even know to do.
Yeah, but that would be simple, base things. Lock your credit. Yeah, privacy stuff usually has an inconvenience. There's some like if you
Yeah.
take privacy action, there is some friction that's going to happen, which is why those things need to be intentional. I'm going to lock my credit because I don't want people opening credit accounts in my name. I don't want this stuff going on. Yeah, it's actually probably good for us financially because we have to jump through hoops in order to open up a credit card to buy a car. We're going to be less impulsive. We're going to be more intentional about what we do if we do it that way. But you always have to think of, why is Kohl's offering, hey, we're going to give you a 10% discount? They're not doing it because they like you, because they just want to give you a discount. They know that if they give you a 10% discount, they're more going to make up for it in selling products to you. Like it's not altruistic on their part.
Yeah. Yeah, and, my wife, she wouldn't even think twice about it really because she's a early childhood special education teacher, right? So, like, it's like she's not thinking, everyone's out to get her or
Yeah.
anything like that. Like, I'm the paranoid one. Like, I'm the one that's wondering what you're gonna do with my Social Security number after I put it into this, either on this
Yeah.
piece of paper or, into your system or all that sort of stuff, right? So,
Yeah.
and
We
like you
just,
said, it's inconvenient. It's not
yes.
supposed to be like super convenient. Like when I call up Chase and I talk to my account manager, it's like there's a step to the process that I have to go through that verifies it's me. And as it should be, because I have 300 episodes out there of me talking online. Someone can easily do a deep fake of me,
Hmm.
but if they don't know a certain code or whatever it is, they're not getting access. The phone call immediately ends.
And I'm surprised by the number of people who don't have 2FA enabled on their email account.
Yeah.
It's like people think, oh yeah, I need to enable 2FA for logging into X, Y, or Z. But it's like you understand that if someone gains access to your email, they effectively gain access to your bank accounts, your retirement,
Yeah, because
all
you
your
could just
family
reset
members,
everything.
they could just reset it. Or worse than that is they can just sit there and listen
Yeah.
because there was an interviewed guy once who, while he was traveling, his phone got SIM swapped. So someone was able to port his phone number over to theirs. They were now able to get the two-factor authentication SMS messages, and they got into the accounts. And then after they got in, they port swapped the phone back to him. So he didn't even know that it had happened.
Jeez.
And so that's like those sort of things are the worst case scenario is look, if I got locked out of my email account, I know to start contacting banks and stuff right away. But
Mhm.
what if I don't know they're in there?
Right.
Is it a day? Is it a week? I mean, think of what hackers do, in corporate, on the corporate platforms. They may sit there for days, weeks, months, or years before they deploy a payload and exfiltrate anything.
Yeah.
Well, the same thing could happen with someone gets in our email account, they start seeing bank statements, they start seeing payroll, they start seeing, hey, we're going on vacation. Okay, now I can start to plan on when to do stuff. Hey, you're
Yeah.
going to be out of the country in a month. You're not going to be paying attention to your bank account while you're out of the country. Let me, transfer everything out while you're on vacation.
Right.
Imagine trying to do that from the other side of trying to unwind that from the other side of the world.
Yeah. Yeah, I try to, there's a lot of different things that I do very intentionally because several years ago at this point, I kind of like mapped my central control of everything that I have
Hmm.
down to, a few accounts, right? Where it's like if they gain access to this, I'm basically screwed everywhere, right? If they gain access to this, I'm screwed in this way, like all this sort of stuff, right? And so like the password to my emails, I don't even know the password. Like,
I don't know
it's
mine
a
either.
super complex password that is stored in a super secure vault that requires, several layers of authentication to get into. And if you still get into the vault, get the password, put in the password, there's a two-factor code. If you somehow SIM swap my phone, that's fine because guess what? It's using the Google Authenticator app or
Yep.
Microsoft Authenticator app or whatever it is, right? And those are all encrypted. So even when I change my phone, it is a very arduous task because now I have to log into 50 different websites and reset my 2FA. So, like, even if you get the 2FA code, hey, guess what? You have very limited amount of
Yes.
time until I switch it.
But I know people who, they silo things. It's like, okay, this is the email address and phone number that I use for social media accounts. There's this different phone number and different email address that I use for my financial stuff. I don't ever email friends from that. It's only used for accessing bank accounts. And then here's the one that I use for when I'm talking with friends. And here's the one that I use in doing work stuff. Is it a pain to manage for some people? I I I don't go to that extent, but I understand why people would do that because look, you hacked my social media account and you didn't get into my bank account. You hacked my work contacts. You didn't get into my bank account. And you can, it's that concept of even when you do with like computer security, assume that someone is going to get in. And now once they're in, how do I mitigate what they have access to once they've gotten in? If you silo it, then you reduce the damage that can be done.
Yeah. Yeah, like, I guess I won't say that online, but, there's critical accounts that, intentionally don't know the password to, that are extremely complex, 20 plus characters. It's like if you crack it, congrats, you need to white paper it, like you should be telling people how you cracked it. That'll be a whole lot more valuable than the $100 you're about to get off of me because I'm broke, right? Like that's my thought with it. But like I have default passwords that I'll use for random sites
Yes.
that aren't, linked to like central critical things to my identity or, anything like that. It's just like a password that, I know off the top of my head, it's complex enough to make it long enough to, take a while to crack. And if it gets popped, it's like, okay, like there was nothing valuable on there anyways, right? Like I'll change it, but there's the blast radius is limited
Yeah, it's mitigating your stuff. Yeah, I think most people probably do that. If I'm install an app because I don't know, I got a connected, I don't know, water bottle or something like that. I don't want to try to figure out a super complex password. I don't want to use my password manager and setting that up. I just want to get the water bottle to work. And so, yeah, okay, so yeah, that account may get that password may be exposed in a data breach. So you get access to my water bottle and you get access to my blender. I don't know what's connected these days. Inconvenient, but not a life shattering event. Bank accounts, two accounts have the same password.
frustrating. Yeah.
And, e-commerce places that I use on a regular basis, you're never going to have the same password there.
Yeah.
And so I think like that's the same sort of thing with privacy. You've got to make decisions in the moment of, how important is this? If you want my zip code, that's probably okay. I usually don't give it. I remember going to, gosh, maybe it was a Kohl's actually. And I was buying something. They said, can I get your zip code? And I was like, no, I don't want to give you my zip code. And they're like, well, I can't ring up the order unless you provide me a zip code. I'm like, well, that's like not super intrusive, but that's just kind of weird. And I was like, ultimately, it's like, well, what's the zip code here? Like, and he's like that. Oh, you use that one. And like, I know why companies do that because they want to understand how far are people willing to drive to shop at this store.
Yeah.
Should we open up another store halfway between these two? Because
It's a
there's
little
lots of
bit too
people in
much.
between. But I'm trying to move to this position of why do you need it? Do you really need that information to conduct this transaction? And lots of places, the person at the front, like, I don't know, someone just told me to do it.
Yeah.
They don't, they don't know why they do it. And usually saying, I don't want to give that. Yeah, I'd rather not give that to you. They're like, oh, okay. Everywhere you go, like, I can't remember the
Yeah.
last retail place that I went to where they didn't say, are you a member? Okay, let me get your email address. I'm like, no, I don't want to be a member. Well, but you get a discount. No, that's fine.
Yeah.
You don't want a discount? I'm like, no, well, I'm perfectly fine not getting the discount because I don't know what you're doing with my information. I mean,
Right.
clearly it's valuable enough that you are willing to effectively pay me for it, but you can't clarify what you're going to do with it. Well, then I don't want to give it to you.
Yeah, data is like the new gold,
Yes.
you know? I mean, that's how companies make all their money. How do you think Meta makes all their money,
Hmm.
Like they're selling, ad space and they're giving those, advertisers information to your data when you see it and when you click on it.
Yeah.
even if you don't put in your information, they're giving you all of that stuff, you know? It's, uh, it's crazy.
Yeah. I mean, we've all seen it, like, hey, switch to, incognito mode is not like gonna save you from everything.
Yeah.
Privacy browsers, they're not gonna save you from everything, but better than it's kind of like Faye using an SMS message. It's better than not using Faye. Is it totally gonna save your life? No, but it's better than nothing. I mean, we've all been followed around by, it's funny. I like to talk about like it from an ad perspective, and because part of it is like I hate seeing ads for things I'm never going to buy. I'm not going to be buying perfume, whatever. So why ever I much rather see ads for tech and stuff like that. But then again, like, do I really want people shoving like? Do I want this product or did I buy it because I saw an ad for it?
Yeah.
And so there's this battle between we live in this real world of I don't want garbage, but I also don't want them to know exactly what I'm doing. I'd love ad platforms to be smart enough to know, hey, those shoes that I was looking for, I bought them, so don't show any more ads for shoes. But at the same time, like I don't want you to even know I was looking to buy shoes.
Right. Right.
Not that that's a security risk, but like all of those things, are either manipulative towards our shopping habits, our buying habits, or they can be used to socially engineer us. I mean, marketing is a form of social engineering, hopefully relatively benign. Or is this information going to be used to socially engineer us some point later in life? You go to the sandwich shop, they ask, they got a clipboard out. Hey, on your birthday, we'll give you a free sandwich. Put your name, your phone number, and your email address on this piece of paper that's going to sit on the counter for the next 3 weeks and everyone else is going to look at it. Is that
Yeah.
inherently a risk? Probably not. Probably, but
Yeah.
not necessarily.
Not sure.
The issue is that if you have one, probably not an issue, it's not a big deal. If you have 10,000, probably not an issue. There's going to be an issue in there somewhere.
Yeah, very true. Well, Chris, we're at the top of our time.
Mhm.
I'm trying to be very cognizant of everyone's time. I had a podcast earlier this week. It was the very first time I went over by 30 minutes. I like had to ask him mid podcast, like, hey, can we keep talking? So I really try to pay attention to it, but I really do appreciate you coming on. It was a great conversation.
I appreciate that. And because this is like, the business people are going to freak out about this. I will give anyone who wants the book can come to my website and get the book. And guess what? If you don't want to give me your email address or your name, I'll give you the book without the email address and your name. Because I think it's important enough that we start thinking about our privacy in our lives, that we start taking those little steps. Hey, is this secret? Is it private? Is it public?
Yeah,
Thinking these things through when we make decisions.
right. Well, before I let you go, how about you tell my audience, where they could find you if they wanted to connect with you, where they can find your podcast,
Mhm.
your book, and any other, sources that you want to send them to.
Yeah. So if they want to find me, cgparker.com, a little bit of background, find stuff about the website there, about the book, whatever other annoying things that I happen to be doing. If you just want to read about the book, you can go to privacycrisis.com. And if you are a tech guy and you want to see my ugly mug at WhatIsMyIPAddress.com, you can go there too.
Awesome. Well, all of the links, including the ugly mug, will be in the description of this episode. I hope everyone watching, listening, enjoyed this episode as much as we did.
Joe,
See you, everyone.
thank you so much for having me on the podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thanks, everyone. Hope you enjoyed it.